Hi, this is Pastor Dan with Common Ground. So this week we're going to continue to look at worldview, specifically at meaning and purpose. Now, basically we're asking the question, what is the purpose of our existence? And that question has significant ties to what you believe about origins, where we come from, and destiny, where we're going or what's after this life. Last week we did look at origin a little bit deeper, so feel free to check out the previous week's video. The Bible does speak much about purpose and even the purpose of all creation. And Colossians, a book in the Bible, chapter 1, verse 16 states, "For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him." So if all things were created for God, then surely our purpose and our meaning is tied to him. In fact, this really is what the Bible communicates, that a God perspective of human meaning aligns with God's own purposes and plans. There's a proverb that states, "Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails." Now, the opposite of this is true as well, that there's futility. The Bible teaches there's futility in living a life when it's only lived for this world. So when we miss that our meaning and purpose is tied to God, the Bible teaches that this is futility. There was a king who lived, he ruled the nation of Israel back in 950 roughly BC. He was possibly the most prosperous and productive king ever. And he was known especially for his wisdom. It seems like an awesome thing to be known for. He spent his years searching for meaning and purpose. And he didn't withhold himself from anything. He first gave himself into pleasures, and then he gave himself into work, and so forth. He also invested his life in various areas, of gardening and building and exploring and you name it. And you can read in the Bible, the book that he wrote, where he talks about these years of searching for meaning and purpose. Now, the king's final conclusion was that the whole purpose of man was to fear God and keep his commands. So let me explain a little bit more what that means, because I know when we use the words fear God, that doesn't always sit well for people, but this king basically was stating that our purpose and meaning have to do with recognizing and submitting to God's sovereignty. So when we recognize God's sovereignty, we fear, or a better word, it might be revere, respect him. When we respect him enough to acknowledge that what he says goes. What he says is the standard. And when we submit to his sovereignty, we align ourselves with his own love and his own plans. So this is why there was once a man who was a murderer of Christians. But his whole life would change when he began to align his understanding of meaning and purpose with God's own purposes. And he would later write this from the book of Romans: "We know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purposes." So you probably heard that last piece where it stated we have been called, or who have been called, according to his purposes. Not all will acknowledge that God is at work doing something wonderful, marvelous, beautiful, fearful in this world as he's building his kingdom. He's making a people of his own special possession, a people that are going to participate with him in accomplishing his purposes. Another Bible passage, in the book of Ephesians this time, states, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." So God created us to be a part of what he is doing. And when we recognize and live that out, we find our significance isn't based merely on externals or on the things of man or on the way the world defines success, but rather our meaning and purpose can be based on the love and glory of God. So this is the biblical worldview that's built on Christ. The meaning of existence, and all summed up, is to have fellowship with God, working with him, enjoying him in what we do. It's not about living for self, but it's about living for him. And so that is purpose and meaning as we look at it from a biblical worldview. Next week, we're going to take a look at morality. So look forward to sharing with you then.